Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. We have made it through round 11 so far this season, 11 and 3/4 if you count opening round. Now, Liam, back in the good old days, that would mean we're halfway through the season when it was 22 rounds, 16 teams, and everything just worked nicely. But because, of course, we start the season in early March now, no halfway point for you. No getting close to that second trimester review that we'll do at the end of round 14 or 15, depending. Nope, not even halfway yet. But you know what? That's okay, because the more football there is means the more of these episodes we can record, and it means more deep dives and other fun content we can get through. How are you doing over there on the other side of my screen, Liam?
I'm doing very well, Jesse. I'm doing very well. I think the week of footy that was an interesting one. We had some pretty naff games, some tension between clubs. It's all happening, Jesse, but we're not going to talk about that today. But before we get any further into our deep dive, where can people find us? Please let everybody know.
They can find us on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, searching for the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Can also find us on YouTube under the same handle, and Instagram at CMPerfect_AFL, where Liam does generally post some of our best of from the episode when he feels like it. But the good thing about when I say it and kind of bury you in this part is you usually do it.
Yes.
So that's always nice.
That's right. Hold me accountable, Jesse. I'm all for it. That's what I'm here for. I should teach you how to. I mean, you're the youngster here. I mean, you've just had your birthday. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thanks. Not that special.
Not that special.
No.
But you should be the one who's tech savvy.
Yeah, but I just don't want to.
Oh, that's okay. Fair enough.
So it's just better suited with you.
Yeah, because that's something I definitely want to be doing, Jesse, every week. Trying to find us babbling on, finding good clips. We have some good clips though. We have some funny clips.
We do have some great clips.
Enough, Jesse. Enough of this rambling. We're not here to ramble. Maybe we are. Another deep dive this week, Jesse. We're going to jump into it. Now, an interesting one you've brought to the table this week. Tell the lovely listeners what we're going to be diving into this fine week.
So today I wanted to talk about free-to-air television and the current AFL rights deal. Carolyn Wilson wrote an opinion piece in The Age and Sydney Morning Herald, adjacent newspapers that published over the weekend. So we will credit that. I do know that it is behind a paywall for some. So we're not going to go through and riff everything off it just to respect journalistic integrity, but we are going to talk about it and talk about some of the observations Carolyn has made, because that's how the media works.
Yes.
First of all, I want to say this. Carolyn Wilson actually is a legitimate contender for best journo in the AFL space, in my view. She clearly has the trust and respect of a lot of the clubs, and that's why she's able to report on things like this. I know people like to sink the boot in at times, but I think she does a fantastic job and is a legitimate lamplighter, I think, for female representation in sports media as well. So we'll get that out of the way, lavish with praise early, and talk about why this deal sucks.
Okay.
We'll shelve the main gist of Carolyn's piece for now, though, and we'll talk about it from a fan's perspective. Now, Liam, we are masochists for AFL.
We are.
We're watching probably 6-7 games a week, I would say, in various stages, and then obviously all your minis, your highlights, and those type of things to make sure we can come on and do this. But
of course.
I think there's been weekends where I've watched, 8 out of 9 games live, and the only one I missed is because it was overlapping other games.
Sure.
So for us, subscribing to KO to watch the games makes sense. It's just how it is for us.
Yes. But
that's not the case for everyone. That could be a number of reasons. I think cost is a big one. It is, well, I don't know about everyone else, but my plan's, I think, $40 a month now. No, I remember, 3 years ago it was 25 for what I'm almost certain is the same product.
Less probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Lost all the B in soccer, lost all the soccer, you've lost a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
No more AFL Championship. Shout out Sunderland up to the Premier League. Hawaii, no, they're not Hawaii. They're Hawaii lads. I think they are Hawaii lads. That's either them or Newcastle. So I'm gonna really upset people, or I'm gonna make them really happy.
Sure. Ride that fence, just ride the fence, Jesse. Which one is it? We'll never know.
No, go watch Sunderland Side on Netflix. Great show. So I'm gonna stop plugging pay TV now. What I will say this though. So the AFL has, as part of the new TV rights deal, removed the Saturday night game from free-to-air television, and restricted Saturday access for non-Victorian clubs in their home states. Up until round 9 for WA and South Australia, until round 11 for your growth markets in Queensland and New South Wales. So straight away, I think back to my childhood, and I wasn't a pay TV house growing up, but so we had Friday night, maybe 2 games on the Saturday, and a Sunday game. Always had Saturday night footy. That was always there. That's no longer the case. Is that immediately a concern, do you think, for your average fan? Noting your average fan, some average fans will pay for KO, some won't.
Sure. Well, I think if you just take this a holistic look at how media is going in a broader spectrum at the moment, is how many apps do we need to sign up for in order to watch content now? Sure, you could just, do your 7+ or whatever, but KO, Disney, Netflix, Binge,
Paramount,
BritBox if you're so inclined.
No.
You just keep going, you keep listing them off. No, Jesse's not a BritBox fan. He's not watching The Bill tonight.
Is that the old cop show from like the 70s?
Absolutely. 70s, no, it was 90s. That was like my vintage, my growing up.
I thought your vintage would be like Poirot, but like actually in the show. Not when it was made, like when it was set.
Hey mate, you're getting there. You're 1 year closer. You shut up. Now, there's a lot, right? Yeah. There's a lot of stuff.
There is more content than you could ever physically get from this earth. Plus YouTube, 100%. Which is where we are. Hello, if you're watching on YouTube. This is mostly free unless you pay for the no ads bit.
Yeah, which is, I won't say it's silly. I'm sure some people get use out of it, like we get use out of KO. Like for me, it's KO and it's Netflix. They're the two that I've got, and I'm happy with that. That's fine because that's where the majority of my viewing comes in. But God damn if it's not expensive, like to start chucking out for every single one of these things. Not every household is going to be in a position to pay that money to watch what they want to watch. They have to cut costs, have to watch their wallet, especially as it's mentioned a lot in media across the globe. Financial crisis isn't just in America at the moment. It's kind of everywhere. We're kind of all feeling it. We have to make those cuts. Footy is a bit of it's the heart of Australia. Sport is the heart of Australia, but footy and rugby in certain parts of the country, once you cross the Barassi line, it's huge. So having that taken away and put behind a paywall, it's a bit of a slap in the face. And curiously, Jesse, your thoughts on this? You've got opening round. What's the point of opening round? It's to get, viewers in.
You just cut you off and end the episode there. What's the point of opening round? We'll see you next week.
Okay. See you next week. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. But the point of opening round is to capitalize on those growth markets in Sydney and Brisbane, whilst the rugby is apparently up in Vegas, like it makes a difference. What's the point of doing all that if you're then cutting access to those who can't get to games, those who can't afford to binge? Oh my God, it's in my head. To splurge, might I say, on these apps to watch the sport. You're cutting off a massive part of your audience, especially in Queensland, where not till round 11 do you get that Saturday night game. Are you not just, cutting off your nose to spite your face at that point?
Well, it's funny you should mention that because that's Carolyn's main point that we'll come to now in Clubland. Interestingly, throughout the article, the big overlapping arch is they've robbed Peter to pay Paul, or been their nose off to spite their face, as you put it. But the estimate from some club executives within the AFL ecosystem is about 400,000 less viewers of Saturday night games than the previous season. Now, admittedly, it is worth caveating Thursday night, key uptick in demographic, but to caveat the caveat, who's getting a lot of these Thursday night games?
Melbourne teams.
Well, Carlton and Essendon, really.
Yeah, basically.
Like, let's not kid out. Like, it feels like every week. Oh, look, Carlton's on. Oh, look, Essendon's on. Fantastic. Yeah. I can't wait to have my eyeballs bleed out of my face for 3 hours while watching this terrible football.
Yeah.
But this is a pretty big deal right now in Queensland, especially because no football and free-to-wear on Saturday night until round 11 for your Gold Coast and Brisbane. Where are those two teams on the ladder at the moment? At least one of these teams was pretty clearly forecast. I think Gold Coast has been a very pleasant surprise, but they are flying at the moment.
Absolutely.
So doing this is such a risk to me.
Well, it comes back down to what we talk about so often on this podcast, Jesse, and that's the money. It's the business side of things, right? So obviously there's, KO Fox has thrown a shed ton of money at the AFL and gone, hey, just give it to us. Just give it to us, which is a tactic that a lot of streaming services will use. They'll secure the rights to a big show. They'll secure the rights to whatever to try and drive viewers to come along. take a look at Netflix and getting WWE on board, right? They were expecting, well, if you can't get it anywhere else, you have to come to us. So, yeah, I can't remember what my point was going to be, Jesse, but I'm sure it was salient. What are you looking at?
Well, I'm just looking at a statistic that comes out from the Sydney Essendon Twilight game a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
So, apparently, according to Carolyn's article, last year that would have achieved about 60 to 90,000 free-to-air viewers. Had it been broadcast live, as was norm at the time. Now, on a 90-minute delay that it received into Sydney, they reached 10,000 viewers. So this isn't...
10,000?
10,000. Watched it on free-to-air. This isn't working. Like, and if it's purely a case of we just want the most amount of dollars possible and we don't care, then that's one thing. And you know what? I'm not going to say it's fine, but if that's your angle, be comfortable with that. But I don't want to hear about the growth markets anymore if you're going to trash them to scrape every last dollar you can out of a TV rights deal.
Yep.
I don't want to hear it anymore that the AFL is invested in Western Sydney and Gold Coast specifically if they're just going to openly trash the demographic and not consider the impact that delaying games and not showing games at all. You know, not every kid in Western Sydney has to be a GWS fan. You know, think about the amount of WA kids in WA or adults in WA, I suppose you can throw that too. Kids is probably fairer because it's in more of a national competition. But think about how many kids in WA don't support Fremantle and West Coast. They might support a big Victorian club because their parents grow up there. There might be a contrarian and want to go for Port because, oh, look, they've got cool colours and I like their song. Like, there might be might be Gold Coast and GWS. You know, Giants have a very marketable song. They're a young club. Children are young by virtue of being children. You know, there's a connection.
Yes. Well done.
Thank you. But that's the risk here. Now, I love my footy, right? As much as it pains me to do it, I will watch Sydney play Carlton in 2025. Despite my better judgment, I will do that. But not everyone is going to do that.
Yeah.
So this, to me, is a risk. And I want to talk about this in a horse racing context very briefly here.
Okay.
Very briefly. About 10 plus years ago, there was a TV station called TVN, which broadcast the Sydney races and the Melbourne races simultaneously in harmony between the Racing New South Wales and Racing Victoria. They got together, lived happily ever after.
Cute.
Now, racing, unlike the AFL, does not have a monopoly over the country. So you've got different boards and different administrative functions in different states. Racing New South Wales and Racing Victoria do not like each other.
Okay.
They butt heads on everything to the detriment of the sport. To the absolute detriment of the sport. So, naturally, when things got really tense, TVN got cut. New South Wales Racing went off free-to-air TV. Victorian Racing remained on what is now racing.com, but the TV version. It's called racing.com because you can also go on the website, but they have their own free-to-air channel. More people engage with Victorian Racing. Now, don't get me wrong, there are issues with Victorian Racing at the moment. There's redundancies, there's problems throughout in that regard, but that's the accessible product to people. So a lot of people getting into the sport will go to Victorian Racing by virtue of the fact that it's the most accessible platform.
Right.
The risk now here is the AFL is they don't have this inherent competition within themselves, but they do have inherent competition with other sports. Now, if you want to talk about, Bean Sports is a good example. You mentioned that before. That wasn't okay. It was no longer. But you can catch the highest level European soccer from, I think, Spain, Germany. I believe Italy's on there as well. But you can catch those games on there pretty comfortably. Have a great time. I know Amazon Prime has a lot of American sports on there now. So what you're doing with this is you're taking away the natural competitive advantage you have by having home court, being free-to-air television market, a popular sport that has long-standing roots in that space. Now, again, the AFL is in the business of making money. No one is arguing or disputing that. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I don't even care as much about WA and South Australia. Like, yeah, it's annoying, and it affects people here, absolutely. But to make these plans on this almost two-speed factor while ignoring the fact that you desperately need to grow Gold Coast and GWS. Like, there's been the Nepo baby comments in the last couple of days. Like, do you want the Gold Coast Football Club to always be AFL funded? I don't think anyone wants that. I certainly don't think Gold Coast would want that. I don't think anyone wants that. So why kneecap them?
Yeah. It's a strange move, but we'll change tack to the business side, right? So all this money coming in, obviously Andrew Dillon's got these deals going, and
this was a Gillon McLaughlin deal. In fairness, this was a Gillon McLaughlin deal. Dillon was involved, but it's McLaughlin's deal.
Okay, so we've got all this cash now, all this money coming in from these deals. How is this being divvied out, like to people? Advertisers. That's another thing as well. Like where's there who's expecting eyeballs to be on those games, and as many as possible, are now finding. I'm assuming the analytics are showing that they're getting a lot less eyeballs on there.
But where are these advertisers? Because they're not on KO. Because every quarter time and 3/4 time break is a slow motion of a ball almost hitting a post or a Telstra ad.
But I'm also talking just around the ground, around like on the jerseys.
Oh, yep.
Like all those ones as well. Like that's a lot less eyeballs it's going to, and that's what you pay for advertising for. It's a big business. Let's go back to the clubs. I went on a tangent.
Well, I think
where's it going?
Well, you mentioned that, which is funny enough, because U Insurance have apparently queried that with the Lions. You know, being their major Guernsey sponsor and a significant sponsor of the football club, asking what's going on. Like, and I know it's not Brisbane's problem to solve as a football club, but I think that's a fair question. Mm-hmm. If you're paying based on expected numbers and there's a significant decrease in that, especially for a club that's meant to be getting that exposure by virtue of being good, it's a real worry for me. And, you know, yes, the AFL is in the business of making money, and no one is going to ignore that or pretend that's not the case. And the TV rights deal does have benefits because, as you said, money comes in. It's meant to go to the clubs. It's meant to feed down to grassroots sport. Gee, it'd be amazing if they facilitated compensation for state league clubs losing players in the mid-season draft this week, because East Manly are going to lose too. And guess what compensation they get for that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Because why would anything else but the AFL ever matter? But that aside, and that could be a whinge for another week. Sure. Probably next year, because it would have had to be this week. But that aside, it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of supporters of football clubs who may not have access to cash to reconcile where their dollar from this TV rights, by virtue of the TV rights deal, is going, and they're just getting less of their product. So you then get this wider disconnect between your support base and your viewership. And that's a slippery slope. And, you know, I can come back to racing. Racing has gone through that. A significant disconnect between the fact they want to target a younger demographic but don't know how to promote that to them. It's taken racing almost 10 years to figure that out. It's better now. It's absolutely gotten better in the last 5 years, but they didn't really know what they were doing for a long time. But that's changed. You look at other sports, you know, UFC's got a really significant support base now. They've marketed well. They've picked that demographic they want.
Yep.
They're behind an expensive paywall. They're if you wanted to watch those events by themselves, that's cost prohibitive. It's like $60 a pop.
Yeah.
To watch them on pay-per-view. Yet
not cheap.
You'll have a pub packed out comfortably. Multiple pubs packed out comfortably to watch that. They've got that model working for them. The AFL right now doesn't seem to have that because you're just getting attacked from all sides with the AFL at the moment, I feel. And this is difficult, I think, to reverse. Because
it's not reversing.
No. And no. There's 6 more years to run on this deal. So that's 6 more years now of lost growth. Plus Tasmania, you know, are they going to be... I'm not actually 100% sure what the conditions are, but you'd have to assume there'd be similar conditions placed on them. What is that going to do for them? Delaying games into Tasmania in their first season? Like, is that... if that's actually the plan, that's an appalling plan.
I think before too long, Jesse, once the 6 years is done and dusted, I think the new deal that's going to come out, we're in the new norm, right? The new norm, all the things I said at the top about the different streaming services, it's the new norm.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. Everything's going to be paid behind a paywall. I mean, to a certain extent, it always has been, but in different ways. But now it's a case of everything that you want is going to be behind a different paywall. It could get to the point where AFL just has their own thing and you pay for that. If you want to watch the rugby, that's over here. Like KO will be nothing. And then you'll just have specific things because they'll work out that people want to watch this, therefore they'll pay just for this.
I would pay. I mean, I don't know if I pay $40 a month, but I'd happily pay 20 for just the AFL because I'll be honest, I don't care for F1. I know a lot of people do these days. I don't care for it. The NRL doesn't interest me. Like, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's very little. I don't think I'd go on KO for any other reason but to watch the football, and I cancel it the minute that it's grand final week because I don't need it again for another 5 months. If you offer me a cheaper service,
but that's the thing though. Then you offer a cheaper service for that thing. But then, if there is something else you want to watch that might have been on there,
yes.
I'm not saying you specifically.
Yeah, I know. I'm only talking about me specifically in that context.
Of course. But I think that's the slippery slope we're going to go down anyway. I think we're going to go down to this pathway of if you want to watch something, you got to pay for it. That's just how it is. And I think the free-to-wear model has been kind of not dying. It's been obviously being left in the dust a little bit by modern media.
So then should 7 Plus be getting a bigger preference? Because talk about streaming. 7 Plus.
Well, I mean that's the backup, right? Chuck it on 7 Plus instead. But again, we've had it for years over here. Like watching, if you're an Eagles fan or a Dockers fan, if the game's in the weekend and it's in the morning, you're not watching it in the morning on free-to-wear. It's in the afternoon. It's always on delay. It's just kind of the way it's been for some time. But this is like next level. This is taking it away, like in its entirety almost, until for half the season more or less. I know you said before, we're not quite at halfway yet, Jesse. But you know,
I mean, for a growth market, it may as well be. And if you're having a hot start, like you're losing, and apparently if we're losing almost 1.5 times the population in Tasmania from Saturday night views every week, that's going to catch up. I want to finish this with a yes or no question, then.
Okay.
Not as a podcaster, not as someone who's watching the games, as a fan, do you feel more connected or less connected to the AFL and maybe to your club specifically than you did pre-COVID?
I'd say I probably feel a bigger connection. I think COVID changed a lot. So I'd say I feel a bigger connection to my club at least. And football was a good escape for during COVID when you're all stuck inside and they were able to play. I'd say I feel more connected, Jesse.
Well, that's good. That means someone somewhere is doing something right.